Buenos días. Vamos a seguir con el Congreso.
Good morning. We're going to resume the second day of the Congress dedicated to the photography libraries of the industry. We have Monika Lukin Roma to the left, who is responsible for the Cemento Rezola Museum, and we have Iría Pena Presas, responsible for the photograph library, and we have Reyes, Esparcia, Polo, from the Historical Archive of the Telefónica Foundation. Let me introduce them to you, and they have 20 minutes for this presentation, beginning with Monika Lukin Roma, who is responsible for the museum.
En el año 2000, junto a la empresa K6 Gestión.
Apologies, but we cannot interpret because there's too much noise.
Cemento Rezola, proporcionando las pautas de actuación para materializar la organización, almacenaje y registro tanto manual como digital de los fondos. Anualmente diseña y coordina las actividades vinculadas con el material del archivo del programa Añor Gatarac del Museo Cemento Rezola, y este año ha comenzado con el programa de digitalización en 3D mediante fotogrametría de algunos objetos del archivo. Y nos va a hablar del Museo del Cemento Rezola, archivo vivo de una fábrica. Muchas gracias, Mónica, y cuando quieras.
Hola, pues buenos días a todas y a todos por haberos acercado a esta primera sesión del segundo día del congreso que organiza la Fundación Anastasio de Gracia junto con otras.
Thank you very much to the Foundation for counting on us in the museum and the archive, a small archive that we are presenting for the first time from the Basque Country. Thank you, Roberto, for inviting us and for trusting us. And thank you, Maria, for the presentation. So I am responsible for the Museum of Cemento Rezola. It's an archive from Cementos Rezola in San Sebastián, and that is placed in the museum. So to understand why an archive of a factory is in a museum, I would like to talk a little bit about the museum. In 2000, to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the factory, the old school of the neighborhood where the sons were trained to start their jobs in the factory opened the doors and was turned into a museum, a modern museum, by the Basque architect Luis Peña-Bansegui, and with management and Cases Gestión Cultural. Then in 2000 there was a pioneer project in the industrial context of the Basque Country, and the premises of the museum are placed in a very unique place. It has a strong heritage. The museum itself and the environment. And what does it tell, the museum? As every museum, our museum tells stories. The story of the factory, Cementos Rezola, especially the factory inaugurated in 1901 in Añorga. Añorga is a neighborhood in San Sebastián, because of the extractive activities in the outskirts of San Sebastián, and it tells us about the evolution of this factory from 1901, and we have archives or collections up to 1990, and we have objects related to the factory. And you will see that there was another factory by Rezola elsewhere, and also of the industrial colony that came about around the factory. So our collection is a collection that is growing. It's true that the origin of the collection started when the factory Cementos Rezola refurbished some warehouses in the factory. And when the museum is open in the 2000, these collections were transferred to the museum. And this means that it was increasing at the beginning of the year in another refurbishment. There was quite a lot of archive material, documents, photographs. In this case, there were no objects. because we haven't been able to order, classify them and create the inventory, but it is growing. And the origins, apart from being from the factory, they come from donations from the workers of the factory and also the neighbors of Añorga with different objects and documents related to the industrial colony that they have belonged to. Even though the factory of Cementos Rezola, the one that is placed in or situated in Añorga, is from 1901, the beginning of this extraction activities it was placed in 1950 nearby, where Gastañaga converted an old mill from a flour mill in a mill for stones, and it was called La Esperanza. And it was working until the 20th century, and then this factory was created later on to project artificial Portland cement. So it has suffered a series of changes. I'm going to say 3 days. In 1989, Cementos Rezola became part of the European group Cement Français. In 1992, Cementos Rezola was part of the Italy Cementi Group, which is an Italian multinational corporation, and then the German corporation Heidelberg Materias, which is the leader in construction and material, finished the acquisition of the Italian group, and they gained control of Cementos Rezola. So the trademark of Cementos Rezola now was part of the history, because now they belong to the German corporation. So how do we tell the story of the factory? We do so through pictures, photographs. We have more than 3,000 of them, and we have more waiting to be registered or recorded. So the materials were well preserved, and a lot of these photographs had already been archived in the own archives of the company that gave us context about what they were about. And following this conceptualization, we kept them, and we created different series within the archive itself. And so we have different series, as I was saying. The work and industry series, you can see several of them here on the screen. So the one on the bottom left, we don't have a lot of material. And in this one, we can see the initial original factory, La Esperanza, and in the background, the first housing for the workers. And then we have several phases of expansion of this artificial Portland cement that was placed in the neighborhood of Añorga, with the installation of the vertical furnaces, the mills, and there is a series related to industry and labor connected to the workers of the cement factory, and we have photographs of them leaving the factory, of the lab, of the women who were sewing the cement sacks, as you can see here. You can also see the canteen, the workers' canteen, and this space still remains, and they still go and have lunch there. This is for the canteen for the workers, so there are female and male workers nowadays. And connected to the industry and the factory, Cementos Rezola, apart from having its own factory in Añorga, it acquired nearby factories the thermal plant of Ergovia, the other one in Navarra, and the Cementos Ontoria in Palencia, where some workers from the Añorga factory traveled to create this factory, and there are records of the inauguration of this factory in 1963. Both factories in both places are now part of Heidelberg Materials, this German corporation. They are the only cement factories that had remained in Spain. Up to last year, they had another one in Malaga, but it was sold. Transfer, or transport in this case. It is a key element to sell and deliver their products, as it is with every company. And here we can see the archive, and over time we have seen how this transport system has evolved, since the oxes moving the stones from the quarry, and then it was expanded up to San Sebastian, how important the ships were to transport the goods of Cementos Rezola. They buy 3 ships, and they turn them into ships to transport the cement and wholesale. And also, the greatest value of cement delivery was done through tanker trucks, and it was communicated with the Pasajes port, and they were connecting the factory with a train that took the goods there, and also with lorries that took the goods there to the port. As I was saying before, around the factory of Añorga, there was a town that didn't exist before, called Añorga, as I said, and is the industrial colony that the factory Cementos Rezola created around the factory for its workers. The first unit that was created were the workers, the houses for the workers in 1963, and then from then the neighborhood is an independent, or becomes an independent neighborhood, because it is in the outskirts of San Sebastián. So Cementos Rezola built the church, the school, and also the commissary. And they had their own currency for a while, and we have this in the archive. There was a football pitch, and there were bowling facility, and that was such a novelty for the times. Eduardo Torroja, engineer from Madrid, was responsible for building this, and there were a series of facilities brought, created or constructed around it. So Cementos Rezola promoted the Fiestas del Carmen, who was the patron, and then they do several celebrations for different anniversaries. All these festivities are within the industrial colony and with the participation of the workers and also the neighbors. And connected to the colony, there is culture, leisure, and sport. Añorga has a very strong identity within the culture and sport worlds of Gipuzkoa, in football and pelotari, a traditional Basque sport. And in 1953, Rezola, together with the cultural club of Añorga, they created the cinema, or they constructed this, or they built the cinema of Astorga, and there was cinema over the weekend, and there was also a theater, and also this was built by Eduardo Torroja. You can see these corrugated ceiling, which is very peculiar. Apart from the warehousing and recording and preservation of the collections, there is a process of digitalization. We have more than half the collection already digitalized, and you can check them in the website of the Cemento's Rezola Museum. And since the year 2000, we are part of a program driven by the Basque Country government, the CIME, which is a collective catalog of the Basque Country Museum, where the users can check all the collections of the museum that belong to this network. The collection is placed in a museum, and the museum has a task of dissemination and is part of the schedule of the museum. There is Añorga-Tarrac. Añorga-Tarrac is an archive, and it means the people of Añorga, and we shouldn't forget that the museum is placed in the industrial colony and is closely connected to its neighbors. So we collaborate together with them in several projects. To get the oral witnesses accounts of the factory Cemento's Rezola, we did some interviews to the ex-workers and people who were retired from the factory. This audiovisual material was translated into a book, and this audiovisual work was published, and this content is part of the general content of the museum. There is an area in the museum just for the Añorga-Tarrac, and you can watch this because it is always there to be checked. And then we have the European Days of Heritage Days, and we have different activities programmed for it. And this year is around the live archive. And what we're going to do, we have rescued a lot of images from the archive in the context of the celebrations that the factory was doing of the 50th anniversary. We're just going to expand this to different parts of the neighborhoods, and with the cultural association, dance association, and choral associations, and all these different cultural associations, we're going to recreate these different moments with the idea of disseminating it, that thanks to these associations, the cultural heritage of Añorga is still alive. And then we're going to have also temporary exhibitions. Every year we have a small format exhibition where we exhibit the collections of the archive, just exclusively the collections under as a theme, or together with other Basque Country Museum. So through objects that we have recovered from other industry, together with the objects and documents of Cemento's Rezola, we enhance the heritage material since 1950. This has been so important in the industrialization of Guipúzcoa and the Basque Country. This year we have an exhibition called La Revista Escolar Añorga, the school magazine of Añorga. It was born in 1937. It started as a bi-monthly magazine, and it's still being published, and it is for the neighbors of Añorga. And it has a lot of quality in terms of the text and also the composition of the magazine itself. And through the JEP, this European Heritage Days, we had a journey around the colony, the canteen, as I was saying, the bowling alley, etc., all the facilities. This is a leaflet, and that is folded, and is a journey through all these heritage spaces. And here, where we can see the museum, we place some panels with the information of the building, with old pictures of the building, so that people had more exhaustive information about the industrial colony of Añorga. And also we would like to highlight, because it's one of the works that the museum is carrying out, that we have very inclusive projects. So we have some European Heritage Days where we have some people with blind people who were coming, and they could see the objects of part of the colony. Well, that was all. Thank you very much. We invite you all to come through the Insieme platform and the archive to know us, and also a visit as well, if you wish to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Monika. We're going to give the floor to our second speaker, who is Iría Pena Presas. She holds a degree in history by the University of Santiago de Compostela, master's in visual heritage, specialized in photographic heritage, and master's degree in archive management by the University Carlos III. She has developed her career in different audiovisual media as audiovisual documentarist, and she has coordinated several exhibits in Acciona. Thank you very much, Iría. Thank you very much, Maria. I would like to thank all the organizers for inviting us over. It is truly a pleasure to be here, and it is fantastic to have so many people listening to us. Let me introduce the archive that we have at Acciona. This presentation is called Acciona in black and white, because you will be familiar with Acciona. You can find billboards of our company all around. Acciona is, as of today, one of the most important Spanish multinationals included in the IBEX 35 ranking list, and it is a corporate holding rendering all kinds of services, but also engineering activities and industrial services. Acciona is born at the end of the 90s, but Acciona sets the origin in a company which was founded in 1931 by the grandfather of the current president of the company, an engineer from Bilbao, who in 1931 decides to set up, together with a civilian businessman, Manuel Tábora, this company. So I would like to see the trajectory of the company and the whole photographic heritage. I'm talking here about rediscovery. Why? Because in 2019, Acciona commissions the museums and exhibition business, Acciona Cultura, the company I work for, to create a museum about the company at Acciona's new headquarters in Madrid, relaying the company's history. So from this commissioning onwards, we started analyzing which would be the material to include. We studied the different memories and a José Entre Canales book, and we undertook several projects that we believed were important in the history of the company since 1930. So we started asking among the colleagues, and they were like, we have a warehouse where we keep all the archive. They take us to a warehouse, and obviously there was an archive, and things were kept in boxes, but there was a really basic inventory, and they were like, we have so many boxes of this project. And we started opening boxes after boxes. So one of them that we were interested in, which is the photograph, well, she started saying, where are the boxes? Because we have contract agreement and all sorts of documents, but I was missing photographs. So Acciona publishes normally, usually a magazine, every few months, and there was a section called History, and we could find there some historic photographs, and I'm like, where are all those pictures? So I was asking the people in charge of the archive, and they were like, no, yeah, we have a photograph library. And I'm like, okay, show it to me. So now we're going to see this rediscovery of that photographic archive. So once we reach that warehouse, we can find thousands of photograph albums. There is like a bulk of everything, basically, a pile of everything. So with a purpose in mind of setting up a photograph museums, we started the house at the ceiling, at the roof. And we developed the project in the middle of the pandemic, so the urgent thing at that moment was to digitize. We digitized in JPG, and we started digitizing in the doing it wrong, because the purpose of the archive sometimes is based on a trial and error approach. We started digitizing only the photograph, but you can see that the frame that the photographs were stuck to contained all the information of the pictures. The people who were digitizing, yeah, fantastic, I'm going to digitize the image. Yes, but what is this picture relaying? Because is this from 1930, 1950? Is it set in Bilbao, Madrid, the Canary Islands? So we were wasting time and losing all the information contained in that picture. So when we digitized properly, it was October 2020. By then, we had digitized 45,000 pictures with a frame, with the necessary descriptive information. But then we had the urgency of conducting a photograph archive project to place a bet on performing an inventory and starting cataloging the archive that we had. So we needed to enhance the value of the photographic archive, and first we did that internally. We analyzed the volume that we had in our hands, and there was a lack of human resources to help us. That's why we presented the challenge ahead to the company, saying basically, please, let's hire someone who help us, because we're lacking the necessary personnel, and the people that could help us in the warehouse is not sufficiently qualified. So we issued a report in order to enhance the value of the photographic archive, which is the seed to everything. It was done by several colleagues, and we decided to divide it. And to enhance the value of our archive, we divided it into several sections. We could see that we had a photographic archive that had a variety of themes underlying. It was not just all the works from Entre Canales and Tábora, but also geographically and time-wise, there was a great variety. So let's take a look at the pictures, because you're going to see how invaluable this photograph archive is. We had some pictures of railway roads and motorways. This is an example of the bridge of Pelanquinos. And there were plenty of photograph albums which suddenly had some panoramic photographs, but because they needed to study and survey the field by performing these kinds of panoramic views. We have many different bridges. The San Telmo Bridge, I think this is around 1930, and it is the first work where José Nutre Canales, the founding engineer, participates, which will provide him with technical skills. He did it with Hydro Civil, which was a company created by a teacher of his in civil engineering, and this is going to lend him the necessary skills to undertake some additional projects. We have these highways, or these roads rather, from the Canary Islands from 1930, and then the airport of Rodeos in Tenerife in 1945, also a panoramic view. Currently, the situation is completely different, and you wouldn't recognize the area. And then we had some hydraulic works pictures. You can see the workers from the Elizabeth II water channel, docks, for example, the Santi Petri fishing dock. And there's a complete album of pictures like this, and you can see the whole development of the works since the land surveying project until the through the undertaking of the works until the ending. And this is Huelva, 1963, and dry docks like Avilés and the Avilés area, where there was a plan for dredging and also industrial premises, nuclear and thermal power plants, and Entre Canales y Tábora built almost all the nuclear power plants, with the exception of a few, one or two, in Spain. We also have hotels since the 50s, and you can see here a hotel in Ceuta and another one in Alhucema in the 1960s. And then we also have the company building dwellings and housing facilities all around Spain as part of the Franco's regime dwelling plan. And we had a myriad pictures which portrayed many different areas all around Spain, and we needed to deal with the quality of the images. The quality of the images, at the beginning you were surprised that that could have been done by an engineer of the company, and as we started opening the albums, we could see the names of many photographic studies that had been hired and outsourced in order to undertake these pictures. Raimundo appeared in Cádiz, Portillo in Madrid, the photographic offices, Huelva, Novella and Avilés, Blanco in A Coruña, Pacheco in Vigo, Paisajes Españoles like Benítez in Tenerife, Dauphí in Tortosa, and Bagan in Sabadell. So at the end, this was revealing that photographs became an important tool for the company at the time, a tool that enhanced the value of the photographs and the technique, and which recorded the reality. It was part of a reality record which attested to the technical skills boasted by the company. We also should talk about the historical value and the memory it entails, not just in terms of the memory of the company, but also that of the country. We're talking about pictures from the 30s until the 70s, and we all know what's going on in Spain at the time. And we should say that the company in the 40s is when it reaches its peak in Spain. We needed to rebuild the country, basically, after the war, and the company in the 40s is focused on rebuilding the majority of the railway roads and railway bridges all around Spain. Renfe in the 40s has some tenders for the rebuilding of railway roads, and Entre Canales is awarded 50 of those projects. And you can see the Villanueva de la Serena to Lorosan railway road. And from the 40s, we can see that the company is building many silos at the moment because of Franco regime's plan to control the serial production. So we have pictures from the silo in Malaga, 1953, and we can see parts of the port, a silo which is currently non-existent. And as an anecdote, we have the silo from Torrelobatón in the 1950s, which is built in a castle. And in the 50s, we can see the peak in technical skills and economic profits of the company. In the 50s, the iron and steel project from Avilés is undertaken following the example of the UK in the Second World War, and it was the largest iron and steel companies in Spain and one of the top largest ones in Europe, and all those projects are undertaken in the Avilés area, in the estuary. And in the 50s, we can see the construction of military bases by Entre Canales y Tábora. That gave the company fantastic profits, both from a technical and economic standpoint, because in the 50s, Spain was closed to the outside, and the contact with the US lends a technological transfer of a fantastic nature to the company and to their workers, and it places the level of the company at an unprecedented level. Dating from the 60s, with the development plans streamlined around that time, the company undertakes the famous dams And also dating back to that time, we can see the construction of many hotels because of the larger economic opening of the regime. And part of that value enhancement of the archive is lent by the volume. In October 2020, we calculated that we had 180 linear meters of photographic archive, and we had more than 45,000 digitized pictures. Currently, we boast 100,000 digitized photographs, but there's still a lot of scope for work. And finally, after conducting the inventory and convincing many people at the company, we undertook an agreement between Acciona and Fotodoc, so that they could come over to do the inventory of the first 100,000 photographs of our archive. Just to give you some brushstrokes and some data, I don't want to delve too much on this, but out of that inventory we had different classifications, documentary classifications, and necessary and interesting figures. From the green ones, 1,285, from the yellow albums, 18, and we had many boxes of archive containing many materials and a whole variety of photograph albums that couldn't be allocated to those inventory groups, and many slide boxes. So here we began with the process of cataloging. We scanned images at the beginning, and we didn't gather the description, which made no sense whatsoever. Obviously, if we want to locate something, it needs to be properly catalogued, and we established certain cataloging guidelines that I don't want to delve into, but it was important to know the location, the projects it was adscribed to, the places that project was built, if it was a positive image or a black and white image. Future challenges ahead for our archive. We have plenty to continue to digitize. That allowed us at a moment in time to lend access to many people to our archive, especially when we were working on the museum development, and to continue with the cataloging project. What's the use of having many pictures if we don't know what it is relaying? Because a picture can be talking about a bridge, but then suddenly you can see a boat or a car, which is going to lend a different use to that picture seen from the current perspective. And dissemination. This is the result of the urge to create a museum. So at that museum, which is going to be inaugurated at the end of this year, the beginning of next year, at the new headquarters of Acciona in Madrid, one part of it is solely devoted to temporary exhibits, with the aim of those temporary exhibits to be sourced from our archive and to create a digital photographic archive. There is a constant struggle to disseminate it. Just like if we don't catalog things, we don't know what's there. If we don't disseminate it, it makes no sense whatsoever either. So here we have our colleague from Telefónica, and I was telling her that their archive, their digital archive and digital websites of digitized photographs is always a benchmark for us, and I think it's essential that we work towards that line. These are part of our future challenges, and I hope that we're going to be able to get there. To conclude, and I'm going to wrap up, it is essential for corporations and for companies to cherish their photographic heritage, because it belongs not only to the companies but to all of us. It's necessary to undertake the inventory and catalog classification. It was embroidered in my head. Many teachers that instilled this knowledge into my brain and this is something which is ingrained in my head, are here present in this room. And it is essential for us to get training. For people in charge of archive management, I have been working in some archives where we could see some pictures and it's like, oh, okay, well, we have 10 pictures. I don't know what they are related to, and never mind. But this happens less and less, but it's still happening. So it's really important that we know how to treat and manage all the documents that appear in an archive. And that will be all. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Iria.
Thank you very much, Iria. We have already seen that the subjects of inventory and cataloging that we insisted on teaching you is deeply ingrained in your mind. Let me introduce Reyes Esparcia Polo. She has a degree at the Autonomous University of Madrid, and she's responsible the Telefónica Foundation Historic Archive and Technological Heritage, and she's going to talk about the industrial heritage in Telefónica. Thank you very much, Reyes, for attending and for being here. It's always an honor.
Muchas gracias a vosotros por la invitación.
Thank you for the invite, as always, and those of you who come to hear us. Things that we love, and we enjoy, and we suffer as well. So I have come in other occasions to talk about the photographic archive and for the archive from the 20s. And now we are in a wonderful process for all the documentary archives. So the documentary archive includes everything that we have been able to compile. When Sylvia was talking about boxes, I have had all sorts of containers. This is a reality, and that's how we find things. And also material that has been looked after looked after by people from the company. So I'm just going to summarize briefly, because what I wanted to do is to show the material that we work with, and we are finding wonderful things. So we're going to talk about the technology of the archive. This is the Telefónica archive, and we manage it in the foundation. This is in our regulations. We have this work. And it's all sorts of material generated by the company in their work. And I mean all the work. So we're just going to see a brief list of everything that we have been talking about. So each department was preserving everything: accounting, transport, commercial, and we have been able, with all of that, to compile it in the documentary archive. And what do we have? Material from the 19th century until the year 2000, 2005. Telefónica was founded in 1924. Next year is our 100th anniversary, so we are going a bit crazy. We have a wonderful birthday ahead, and it is true that, as you can see here, we have material from before 1924, the end of the 19th century, because the company has other type of documents. Because of the 50th anniversary, and they built an exhibition of the history of telecommunications, and they recover material prior to 1924. So we have been, the company has been preserving that, and we have all that material. Also, the technological heritage, and these are the objects that the company has used to give a phone service to the country. So what happened with Telefónica? It had a monopoly, and it signed an agreement with the state in August 1924, a few years after it was founded, and it is in charge of establishing the phone service back then in the whole of the country, and it documents it. and has all those documents. And this is the history of the country itself, not only the company, because we are the ones who provided that service. So we are in the history of the telecommunications in the country, the history of our country, and obviously the history of our company. So what technology have we preserved? Like Iría was saying, we have photographs, documents, we have posters, banners, audio and video, audiovisual material, and we are working with that material right now in depth. So here you can see a few images. Also we have floor plans. You see the shelves, and you see the floor plans, etc. I'm just going to go into all of this in more detail. I just wanted to show you something. So what about the topics? So we reach the year 2000, but we have a few documents from after the 2000. So all the work from the lab, which was founded after 1924, and they test all the materials that they are going to use in the setting, cables, woods for the posts, and all the tests have been preserved from the first test that was carried out. We have contracts, we have setups of all sorts, in plants, in submarine cables, offices, building constructions, accountancy. We were pioneers in how the accounts were kept in a company in the 1920s, and also the fund people, all the workers. We want to highlight the heritage value of the archive. Of course, we need to do an inventory, we need to catalog it, we need to digitalize it, and we have been working in this process for years, so I'm just not going to stop here. But we have been enhancing this. If we don't enhance the archive, we're not going to work with it. We're not going to convince anyone to invest, because this is very expensive. You have to invest money in all the technical part and personnel. And if we don't tell people that it's worth it, we're not going to convince anyone. The value of this archive is immense, and we are the only ones who have been doing this work. We have this memory, we have this documentation, and the economic and social value. We have images of a society that otherwise we wouldn't know about, and we have images of all the country, but also Ceuta, Melilla, the Canary Islands, and the Balearic Islands of all the country. And we have seen how the economy has evolved through the documents, how it evolved, and through the images. I'm just going to talk about the images as well, not only the documents, and also the technological revolution since the 20th, and also at the end of the 19th century. We are going to see how the technology has been developed in the country, and also it's got educational value, not only for the visitor, but also internally, because we have manuals, we have training guides, and also how we train the staff at Telefónica. And we created a training school, because they had to train their workers, and it had to create some job positions from scratch, and they train their own staff, and we have all the documentation preserved. And what can we do with the archive? Well, we can see how the company's history was. We can see how technology was developed, how society and people evolved. So we could see how people were in the 1920s, And in my case, there are two generations, my grandmother's generation, and we can see this in the documentation that we have. And it's essential to see how we have preserved this document, to see this global overview of the telephone. We have the advertising, we have this design, and this herald, and how it has evolved. So we have this global overview, as I was saying, of the heritage and also of the archive. And this is from Telefónica Española magazine that the company published for the employees. This was started in January 1925 because we're going to offer the best phone service in the world. So we can see the famous female operators of Telefónica here. And also the magazine was published from 1925 to 1931, and we created other type of documentation. I'm just going to move forward a little bit, and I wanted to show what we can learn from the archive. Here we can see the technological development. I was very jealous when I saw all these pictures that you had, Iria, with all the information. In our case, these photographs in these records was always digitalized. It offers us information. We need all that information that surrounds these photographs to be able to document all these images. Angela and Elena, who are working with us with a grant in the archive, they might recognize these pictures. The Pentaconta, digitalized at 1240, digitalized one. We can have this because of all the documentation that we have in the Telefónica archive. So we have all the technical documentation related to everything that I have been talking about. So the adjust of the machine 7A1, this is the image here. This is a rotary. And we have these notes of a technician. And we have also all the documents that we have from the US. We have the ITT support, and we receive a lot of information and a lot of documents and also working methods. And this is from the 20s as well. And we have technical managers where they document all the meetings in the minutes and with all the problems and all the solutions that they find. There is an inventory for this. We are cataloging it and we are digitalizing it. And let's move forward. In the world of transport, we have here all the vehicles that the company have used since the beginning. So we have here little track from the 20s and also the 80s and 90s, how they have evolved, how the company has been moving forward, has been developing. And we have the photograph and the diagram. Why? Because here we have the information coming from the ITT, how to build this track. And also how to build some other tools, paraffin pans, and how to do all the work to provide this phone service. And here we see a trolley. This is works in the cable from Barcelona Valls and the 20s, and how to design this trolley where the tools are being transported. And this is the beautiful thing about the archive. We are trying to work with this as a whole. connecting through the tool that we're using to catalog all the material, because everything is there. The documents, the floor plans, the diagrams, the banners, the photographs, it's all our tool. And the idea is to be able to connect all this information so that when we see the diagram, we can get to the picture, how this trolley was built and how it was used. And here we see how the work evolved. We have here the equipment and the technicians. We have thousands of pictures of technicians working in all sorts of plants and equipment. And we see how the technician has evolved as well. Of course, we have the female operators and the training, the operators guide, and how the work was in the 20s, how it evolved in the 40s, how IT is in the 70s and 80s, and how people evolve as well. So the documents and also the pictures. This is an advertising at the top. Is a service provided by the company. And you can see the picture of the female operators, who are the ones who provided this service, how the microplankton technique evolved and how people evolve through history as well. This is part of the work that the female operators did. They had to document all the tariffs, all the contract rates, and we wanted to show that, and how the work has the guards were working, and we see here how it has evolved. We have the social revolution, women working in professions that were only limited to men in the past, and we can see there in the posts working as technicians, and we can see this in the archive. So I'm not talking just about the importance of the image itself. We have photographs of Alfonso, Marín, Contelas, Villaseca, and Benitez. So I wanted to have another look at the archive, not only enjoying the picture of the photographer, but also to look at the information that we can extract from these images. This is advertising again. These are ads and different ways of advertising, of this concept of you are isolated if you don't have a phone line at home. And this is the same nowadays with the mobile phone, and how society has developed, has evolved. And there is a woman driving a convertible here in the ad. So this is part of the advertising back then. And then this ad says computers are telling each other their things. So computers are already talking to each other, and this is part of the development of technology and how advertising generates this way of promoting these messages that will attract your attention. And also, we have pictures of different cities. Here is the Gran Via from the 20s. This is a photo montage. It's not real. They have been creating this image with Photoshop. It's drawing included in the image to show how the Gran Via was going to look like after this building was built. So the photograph in the middle is the Fuencarral Street in Madrid, and these are the 70s. And it's also the ability to be able to use the archive to see how cities were. And I have just chosen Madrid. I could have chosen any other, But it is easy, I think, to recognize these streets, even if we are not from Madrid. So that's why I chose these images. So we have documented this in all the cities and towns where we have this phone telephone cafes. So this shows how we used to talk, how we talk now, since the 20s until this phone, this image of a phone in a car, which was a technological feat. And then we see another image. Don't worry, the operators will pick up your call. So we have other bulletins, internal documents, and publications of the company for the internal use. And then we have astronauts going to the moon through the Gran Via. We love that image. And all this documentation that we have internally and allow us to just give context to these images that sometimes we don't have information about. And it gives us information about the equipment, the cities and people, the operator. The microplankton is part of this technological heritage. These are pieces and objects of the heritage, and this is the equipment working. So we can see that piece was used by people in the company. And the work that we are carrying out now, we are digitalizing and cataloging. And here you can see some images of the archive. And I was a speaker a few months back, and I said that we had to do some work. We can't leave this here. And thanks to the work of Angela and Elena, we are transferring these to proper containers, so they are not in these drawers and these boxes, so we can show how this photographic archive is looking now. And that was all. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Reyes. And apart from the archive, and next year for your anniversary, is the enhancement of the archive, the heritage value of the archive. Thank you very much, and we're just going to move on to the next panel.
Claro, sí.
Bien, buenos días a todos y a todas. Continuamos.
Okay, we're going to resume. And this is a humanly thrilling space called Homage, tribute to Adela Medrano, a pioneer in industrial documentary film in Spain. And in addition to counting on two expert field researchers in the career path of Adela Medrano, we have the presence of Adela Medrano, who we would like to applaud here.
Bien, a continuación, en la mesa nos acompañan.
We are accompanied by Amaia and Pilar Garcia, and Juan Miguel is going to proceed to the presentation. Good morning, Adela. It's a pleasure to have your presence here for the academia. It's key to have professionals of your high rank, and especially a woman in this case. And Fotodoc has the purpose of retrieving the photographic and film work executed by female photographers, and this is a completely meritable tribute, and I know that this has been concealed in Spain, so welcome and thank you so much. I would like to introduce the two young researchers that have performed this research job on Adela, who are María del Pilar and María del Pilar García Herrador is a student of a master's degree for secondary high school teachers, and she holds a master's degree in literary and cultural studies. Her line of research is focused on social filmmaking in the 70s in Spain, and she has published many publications in área abierta. Amaia Zufiaur holds a degree in audiovisual media, masters in film reviews, and masters in literary and cultural studies by the Autonomous University of Madrid. She regularly publishes film reviews at the Mutaciones magazine, and she has also published in magazines for science fiction. She combines reviews with the academia. I give the floor to them. Thank you very much. Good morning. As we have been introduced, we are Amaia and Maria, and we're here to introduce research that we have been working in the last year, which consists of studying the work of an author who was unknown, to vindicate her presence and retrieve that from oblivion. And she is Adela Medrano. She is a female filmmaker of the 70s who was the first female to hold a degree in filmmaking at the University Autonomous University of Madrid. And Adela Medrano performed many different publicity documentaries, and we can highlight some pieces for Coca-Cola, It's Like This, and 25 Years, a work that narrated the history of Café for Nescafé, to some collaborations with the Ministry of Tourism, such as Costas de Levante. This project was initiated as part of our master's degree internship in literary, artistic, and cultural studies at the Autonomous University of Madrid, and it was a research project initiated by our tutor, Luis Fernandez Corrado, who gave us the job and gave us the clues on when to start. The starting point was already a bit complicated in itself because hardly anyone knew Adela Medrano, the filmmaker, and we started from the assumption that we were referring to a woman. who in the 70s developed her filmmaking career at the end of Franco's dictatorship, and more specifically, she devoted herself to writing and directing pieces related to industrial and commercial cinema and advertising cinema, which have been described as minor genres by the Academy. It should be noted that the work of Adela was not being completely looked after. There are many missing films, and most of them are in a poor state of preservation for the reasons I have just alluded to, the fact that she was a woman in a niche cinema in the Spain of the 70s. The research methodology has been quite diverse. We needed to make a first viewing of the films of Adela Medrano, and these films are distributed in 2 locations of the Spanish Film Archive at the Center of Viewing at the Perales Palace and the Conservation and Restoration Center. And we first needed to locate them. We conducted several visits to those locations, and it was the first contact we had with her work. And later on, we studied that for a longer period of time. In the General Archive of the Administration in Alcalá de Henares, we read the project files, and there we could find more information about the films, such as original scripts, project submissions, film orders, and this helped us verify that the data we had from the film library were all correct, as well as to contextualize them, which was the idea of the origin, and this relevant information was found in these files, and sometimes it could be found in the credits of the films themselves. So it has been a work of research and data gathering in order to be able to contrast them. In addition to that, we need to add a work of interpretation and analysis of the films. We had to read the author stamps, even if we were talking about industrial short films commissioned by companies. You could always find a specific author stamp, which is really important when we talk about 2 or 4 films. In addition to all of this work, we conducted several interviews to the director and her acquaintances, which have been key to make this project happen. We have relied on the memory of many people because there was nothing written about Adela Medrano. And it has also been relevant to support our research, working with other films of those years in order to have some thematic and stylistic references of these kinds of cinema. And in addition to that, the bibliographic support has been indispensable. We have relied on the Industrial Cinema Archive's history of the short films in Spain, and also specific topics of each of Medrano's films, in order to know the historical context. And now my colleague Maria will talk about the industrial cinema and will introduce the Medrano films. Thank you very much, Amaia. As my colleague mentioned, the bulk of the research has consisted of viewing the films made by Adela, and this led us to ask, what is industrial cinema? It seemed quite far to us. So before we define it in the words of the author, we're going to set up the context and say that this cinema first started at the beginning of the 20th century, and we have documentary attests that filmmakers were commissioned with different films in order to address the general audience. Later on, taking into consideration that Adela's work was placed at the end of Franco's regime, we wanted to analyze the use that was made of that kind of film making. The industrial films were done during the Franco's regime as propaganda in order to disseminate the process of industrialization of the country. It counted on a lot of industrial support because it portrayed the right image to the outside. They followed the narrative that they did with the abstract art in order to show an allegedly modern country. And it was interesting also to the businessmen of the time, who were capable of publicizing their businesses and enhance their prestige and show it, because these films emphasized on their collaboration with the progress and the industrial growth of the time. Well, as described by Adela Medrano, the industrial films were the official memory of companies in this documentary format, and they became a letter of introduction to top executives. But it was also a way of seeking for foreign customers abroad. And now, when talking about the success of Adela Medrano in the industrial filmmaking industry, not only did she receive many awards, as you can see on the screen, nationally and internationally, but also at the same time, she was the pioneer and the first woman to shoot industrial films, and she was the president of the 13th Industrial Cinema Festival conducted in France, and she participated also in the discussion that was done in Spain in 1975 for the Revista de Cine program. She was the only woman who was invited to that TV program, and it was understood that she was the only female professional back in the day, and she defined the concepts of industrial cinema. It's also interesting to highlight that the trade unions representatives invited declared that the future projects regarding this type of industrial cinema would be the creation of a film library for industrial cinema, the projections in different provinces of the most relevant industrial films, and that the training courses for business people, these industrial films made by Adela would be shown as a resource. Not even half of that manifesto took place, as is the usual, but they come to show the importance that was shed to this type of industrial cinema back in the day. And changing gears, as my colleague said, the bulk of the research had to do with the viewing of Adela Medrano's films. And one of the results of our research has been the circumscription of the specific features to her work, specific features that can be described as two main ones. We find an anthropological vision and a really clear artistic and anthropological outlook. So the big contribution of this filmmaker to the industrial cinema was to do it from a personal standpoint and from the creativity, obviously within the realm of the commissioning. So this is very revealing of her talent of enhancing the value of some minor themes, and we have found some thicker themes, but thanks to her ingenuity and creativity, she made them simple, understandable, something that people could relate to, and she was also an expert in assembling, and it was really fantastic, her techniques. So I'm going to talk about this artistic vision, and she is going to continue with the anthropologic vision. So this is conditioned by a script given by companies. And what do we mean by the fact that in Adela's work we find an artistic vision, which is very specific? In order to summarize the main intention of the commissioning of the company, Adela Medrano resorted to an artistic motive. She put a picture, or an engraved picture, as in this case. And taking into consideration the context, I thought that it was really relevant and to introduce this three acronyms. I do not have the film because it's not digitized. And I would like to summarize this in this three-letter semiology. It was directed by Luis Enrique Toran, but it was in reality directed by Adela. Normally, Mr. Toran needed to deceive companies in order to let them know that he was the one shooting the film. in order to be commissioned with the order, but in reality, she was the director. Back in the day, to have a female filmmaker outstripping the realms of her domestic life was not accepted, and it looked as though this sphere was restricted to men, and women could only work as secretaries. So in this case, she was a filmmaker, she was the director, she was the script writer. So I'm going to move from the general to the specific, and allow me to merely introduce the commissioning she received. And there was an economic Gibraltar in the Rio Tinto mining area, which was a national pride, but which in the 18th century was exploited by the Brits. So this was considered as unacceptable by Franco's regime, and one of the industrial purpose was the import of goods and export of goods. And we also have the National Industry Plan, which made the specific pivoting axis for the pyrites from Huelva in order to create explosives and to create the necessary assets for the agro-food renovation in the country. So the pyrites industrial sector is considered indispensable for the industrialization project of those years. And that's where Explosivos Rio Tinto company steps in, because this was purchased by the British company. So on the one hand, Adela was commissioned to show how Explosivos Rio Tinto was quintessential for the industrialization and the economic progress of Spain. And on the other hand, this commissioning is framed within the usage that I talked before about, which is the fact that companies were looking for customers abroad. So Explosivos Rio Tinto commissioned this film to Cine Corto when they were at their peak in the 70s, which is the moment of expansion for Explosivos Rio Tinto. That's why they commissioned this film, in order to seek for possible investors abroad. So they were living their economic peak as opposed to the decline in the 80s. Explosivos Rio Tinto was the top 5 company in Spain in the 70s because it was the first multifunctional company in Spain, integrating different stakes from 30 companies in different fields. In the documentary film, you can see the different services that they rendered, like soda, drinks, and manure production. So at the end of this film, Adela Medrano suddenly introduces the dream of reason generates monsters, which is this famous picture from Goya. And we have the illustrated moment, science, reason, and critical spirit. So the filmmaker, reading between the lines, is summarizing through this Spanish Enlightenment moment the idea that through the reason promoted and developed by ERT, they could leave behind the superstitious Spain, which was lagging behind, with the idea of flaunting what they were doing. And to end up in a more generalized manner, this was part of the Spanish Enlightenment that Goya developed her work. And Adela Medrano is linking this to the policy of the Ministry for Industry of the moment, the National Industrial Institute in Spain. And in the promotion of science, they seek to set up an avant-garde country through the development of their industries. So I wrap up by saying that this is one of the great achievements of Adela Medrano, to pick a concept which is not too entertaining at the beginning, but through her ingenuity and creativity and through art, she's capable of rendering it entertaining and useful. And she's summarizing part of the industrial context of the time through the artistic production of a different time, which is very revealing of her great intelligence and culture in Adela Medrano.
So, in the Calidades de la Vida, esta Caja Popular, which was a cooperative founded in Mondragón in Guipúzcoa. It is one of the main industrial centers of the Basque Country, and where the documentary was filmed. And the way in which this anthropological vision show in the work of Adela Medrano, sorry, was just showing reference of art, music, etc. Is a formal resource, and the anthropological element is more in the narrative, is more shown more in the narrative resources. Las Calidades de la Vida has a start with a more poetic tone than the rest of the documentary, something that was frequent in the work of Adela Medrano, just to connect emotionally with the viewer. When you can see the forest and mountains of Guipúzcoa, you can see the sound of the industries and factories around that were showing the main issue, or the main topic of the film. I would like to show some clips just to illustrate this.
¿Nos podéis ayudar los técnicos para ver por qué no va el vídeo como debe ir, por favor?
Can the technicians please help us with the video? It doesn't seem to be working.
No, está abajo, es documental, MP4. Sí, pero es el mismo archivo, que le pasa. Antes el... Sí, ahora... Gracias. Bueno, pues ahora sí que sí. Simplemente es una transición que utiliza ella.
This shows a transition from the mountains of Guipúzcoa to the factory. You can see the transition here.
Y bueno, como ha dicho María, estas películas
As Maria was saying, her films was a tool, and it had this tone, and in the Las Calidades de la Vida you can show how a cooperative work, and for Spanish state this was very strange, but it was common in the rest of Europe. You can see how the company work was the participation of workers and what social responsibility did they have. If we gave importance to the visual element, as Adela Medrano was saying, how to narrate with images how a cooperative was working. And I would like to show a little fragment of the visual elements that she used to show the main topic.
La Caja Laboral Popular está organizada de forma que su creciente poder.
The Caja Popular is organized so that the powerful economic element shows the economic destiny and not the individual destiny. These cooperatives mean that each partner, each worker, regarding of their salary or position, means something. So the board, formed by all the individuals, the delegates and representatives of the workers, is independent. The executive committee is the directors board that coordinates the general board meeting. And through this resource that is more attractive and visual is the way how she summarized what a cooperative was about. And sorry, I missed something that I wanted to say. We were talking about the anthropological vision that was a trademark of Medrano's work. She shows the idiosyncrasies of the Basque Country people as a way of showing how the cooperatives suffer firstly here in the north region. And after the export, they can see how life was happening in these little bars, but typical from the Basque Country. And this is one of the reasons why the cooperative really function well in the areas. All this concept had to be well explained, because they had to be attractive. As we said, this type of cinema, this type of film genre is a tool. It's a cover letter for the company, so to speak, for their clients and investors. And they wanted to give a good image to get new clients. And now we are reaching the conclusions through this research. We have asked ourselves a number of questions about this film genre and the Adela Medrano within the film industry of Spain. The main interest, or one of the main interests of this documentary film, is that these films show a witness account of the industrial development of our country and the economic and social changes that it entails. So with the research, we saw the tribute to this forgotten filmmaker, something that was done, and we saw in the Spanish Film Institute, and we have a first draft on her work, and this research has allowed us to do our bit for in terms of the work that it has been carried out now for female cinema makers in Spain and also in art and literature. And we think that this work will also encourage more people to work in this type of research of female filmmakers in Spain. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, you can let us know. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much. Just doing your bit was a lot of work. It's a great work. Just a couple of comments. I would like to say hello to Carlos Saura, who is here today accompanying her. First photographer, and then producer. You're always with the camera like your dad was. And secondly, someone has been mentioned here. I knew that Adela was the first one to obtain a PhD from the Information Studies faculty, and also other teachers where we taught in that school. And I was in the second promotion of image with just 4 people in the evening group. It's really an honor to have you here. So that's all I'm going to say. So now we know the real authors of the films. So thank you so much. So we're just going to carry on with a tribute to Adela Medrano with an interview and the industry documentary produced by CIMA, the Association of Female Filmmakers. And before watching it, we hope that technology is going to collaborate and is not going to play tricks on us. And I would also like to thank someone who is here, Carolina Penol, who suggested the possibility of including this within the Congress, and that's why we have been able to show all this work. So thank you, Carolina.
Me llamo Adela Medrano.
My name is Adela Medrano García.
Vengo de Barcelona.
I am from Barcelona,
Vine aquí a Madrid.
but I got here to Madrid when I was 18 years old because I studied journalism, and back then, in the third year, we all had to come to Madrid from all the regions, so the ministry can control us all, because it was a professional activity that entailed risks. So I came here when I was 18, and I fell in love with Madrid, and then I fell in love with the father of my children. So I kept on falling in love. I have learned a lot about myself through documentary filmmaking, because I never gave up. When I got married, I was helping my husband with photography, because at the beginning he was a photographer, and I was interested in the mechanical process of photography. The artistic was just something for him when we were developing films together. And then after, I started doing it myself alone, and I learned a lot from him to frame the photo and to edit pictures. I was looking for a job desperately, and all the colleagues from Carlos, my husband, and knew me so well, told me that I could work with them. So first I did a lot of advertising work, first as an assistant and later as a director, and then I was lucky enough to start with industrial documentary filmmaker, and that's when I started traveling.
Es algo que me puede encantar que la gente sepa que se hizo.
I like people to know that a lot of industrial documentary filmmaking was done back then. And I invented that concept. But it was just filming companies that instead of having a work memory, they created a film, which was nicer, more hip back then. There are strong animals, clever, intelligent. But in all the biological scale, the man is the only one who had conquered the fire to get their food and create tools to survive. During the First World War, English people were producing 2 or 3 documentaries per year, and then after that they were producing lots of them, showing the population how to take refuge and how to just heal injuries, just everything applied to processes that were useful for the population. And they created documentaries so that the people came to watch them. And that's what I learned, the short films, just filming them. And I was the only woman who was doing that, and they were always surprised. When I went to the meetings of the engineers, who were the ones who were directing or managing companies, they were saying, "Where is Mr. Turan?" And I said, "Well, Mr. Turan is filming another documentary, so I have to be here because I am the one who has read the memory." And they were just asking me if I understood what they have written. Fortunately enough, I have a good memory, and I just say everything that I have heard before, and they were impressed enough to let me do what I wanted to do. This is going to change civilization, and there is the paradox of civilized world with the suffering of workers. This was a great challenge for me because it was filmed in the Basque Country, and it's a region that has a lot of their own traditions. And anthropologically, it was difficult for me to do it because the people from the cooperative, which were the producers, weren't going to be so happy about it. So I filmed in Mondragon, which was a cooperative town, and I had to show that this cooperative culture was part of the quality of life. This was pure socialism. So all the employees took part of the management, and I had to show this. I didn't want to say it, I wanted to show it. The self-management of these cooperatives means that each partner and worker, independently of their salary and your position, means a vote, or is a vote. And that's where you could see that all the members were in their job positions, and you saw them with their picture and then voting, each of them.
Esa fue una película a lo largo del tiempo.
This was filmed over time, and it was an international competition, and then we had to see all the sculpture in the motorways up to Girona, and everyone was presenting their projects along the motorway. And I loved it because I was with painters and sculptors and everyone who was collaborating in the Mediterranean motorway, just building this sculpture.
Se tuvo que esperar a que se montaran las esculturas.
We had to wait until the sculptures were finalized to film, and this was a long process, and also aesthetically it was very difficult to frame. The sculpture there are high in the middle of a motorway, and you have to be very careful framing this so that you represent the work faithfully. So I had to interview the sculptors, and you had to communicate the message, and you have to frame the whole sculpture. So you had to keep on framing and framing the sculpture.
La primera transgresión que hice en un documental fue cuando rodé la higuera.
The first transgress that I did while filmmaking is where I filmed the fig tree in the house of Miguel Hernández. And I was reading two famous poems, but I wanted to create an homage, and there was but the house was gone, and there was just a wall and a fig tree. And where I got there with the montage guy, I said, we have to get this out. No. And I said, no, we have to put this. This is the first thing that we're gonna show as in the homage or the tribute to Miguel Hernández. So I did what I wanted to do, which was part of myself. So you always have to give yourself, even though it was work commissioned by someone else. But that's how I live. So I think maybe what I'm going to say is strange, but you should never get bored while filmmaking. So the images must be yours, and they should be fun. And it seems somewhat frivolous, but I think this should be something that should be enjoyable for you, and therefore enjoyable for the people who is going to watch it. You have to have a sense of humor. Everything. You need humor for everything. Humor and love for everything. Humor and love for the profession.
Now we're going to pay tribute to Adela Medrano by the organizers of this International Congress and on my behalf as Dean of the Faculty. She adores the flowers, so we nailed it. I'm glad that you liked it. If you allow me, I'm going to steal those flowers from you in order to lend you the microphone for you to address us a few words. I don't really know what to say. I'm really thrilled and happy. I'm really thrilled and happy and very grateful. I believe that you have done, well, the researchers, the girls as I call them, Amaia and Maria, have done an outstanding job because they have deeply dug into things which I had forgotten myself, because I didn't give them any more importance, truly, than the need for money that I had back at the day. And in addition to that, I enjoyed what I did. I think one of the things that you can do in life is to work in something where you find joy and which you like doing, because it's like a luxury. It's like a luxury, really. And we need to be grateful for life, because it lent me the possibility, on the one hand, my partner and my children, I became acquainted with photograph framing, etc. And the rest was of my doing, of my own personal doing. That's something I learned along the way, but I was lucky. So I would like to express my gratitude and acknowledgement for being here. I see many friendly faces, which is something that I find extremely comforting. And especially I would like to thank Amaia and Maria, and Maria and Amaia, because they have done a research job. They have dug, and the outcome is surprising even for me, because I had forgotten things. This means that they're really well prepared in their studies, because it wasn't easy to find everything that I myself had forgotten, because I didn't shed that material any more importance other than making money, because I needed it. And secondly, it was not as creative as I wanted, but to have something creative that would give you pleasure, or to have some aesthetic beauty, in spite of the fact that it was arid. There's nothing more arid than industrial films, but I tried to achieve that beauty. It's really arid when we're talking about industrial filmmaking. But companies were really enjoying their IBMs and their gigantic, ginormous computers. And at that time, what they wanted me to do is to portray all the IBM computers in the walls filled with knobs that were turning around. But all of them were the same. And what were they telling? Well, you needed to give a bit more meaning to those films, to give it more substance, just like when you try to relay the machinery. And you need to take a look at how carefully the workers are creating the electronic circuits and everything. They did it in a pleasurable way because they were learning and they were making the money that they needed. So it's a combination of the two, to be capable of combining the economy that you need and which is necessary, and a certain amount of joy, and to find joy and pleasure in what you do. That, I believe, is a gift, is a godsend, I believe. So, because at the end of the day, you need to toil and enjoy. And if you have still curiosity, you can pose questions. Is there any stage in life that you would like to keep? How is it that you portray so much love and enthusiasm in everything that you do? Well, it's really difficult for me to pick one stage because I must confess that when I was resuscitated by these two fantastic researchers, I was completely out of what I had done. I had done things out of need, and it had been a joyful experience. It's like the advertising spots, but they were longer, more complicated, and then I had more need to give it a bit of a twist. And the advertising spots were something that were commissioned by advertising companies. They were imposed upon me. If you ask me about a specific stage that I would pick, well, it's really complicated. I really liked las calidades de la vida, the qualities of life, because the Basque Country has certain features that are quite, well, I'm Catalan. So, in other words, I come from a small place, but I'm Spanish, and my children are from Madrid, as Madridian as can be. So I have become completely integrated in Madrid. I adore Madrid. How can I complain about living in a wonderful place like Madrid? I mean, it's like I have all my friends, and they need to endure many different things. And we have this faculty which I did not recognize at the beginning because it has changed a great deal when compared to when I was studying here. I did my PhD dissertation, but it was in a different venue. It was at the street, what was the name? Noviciado. Yeah, exactly. Because I remembered that I got my PhD dissertation elsewhere. Many great women studied there at the Noviciado at San Bernardo's venue. Yeah, it was the Holy Spirit that created us all. If you would like to pose a question, I'm available here. If I'm capable of remembering what you're asking about, you must remember that I'm old. Well, thank you. Okay, so we close here. I'm not going to disturb you anymore. Carlos, please stay here for the picture. Maria as well. And the bouquet of flowers. Yeah, you nailed the gift. So while we take the picture, we bid her temporarily farewell with a great round of applause. Standing ovation for her. So we're going to have a coffee break and we'll resume in half an hour. Thank you all.
Bueno, pues vamos a empezar la última mesa de las jornadas del Congreso.
We're going to resume this session, which is devoted
Está dedicada a las iniciativas sociales y colectivas
devoted to the social and collective initiatives in heritage protection. And we wanted to gather some popular and social initiatives in terms of heritage protection out of the initiative of some civil society members. Here we're going to deal with the Tabacalera from Donosti, Fabra y Coats in Barcelona, and SEAT in Barcelona. So, we're going to begin with Tabacaleras del Humo, or Archiveras del Humo, so the smoke archives, a group of ladies working together. And Madi Muñoz Esteban is going to hold this presentation. She holds a degree in art history, who continued her studies regarding immaterial heritage, specialized in cultural management, and for 2 years she has been working in artistic teaching at the mediation group of Tabacalera. And Itziar Imaz Gantzarain, architect and teacher, who has a double crossing between artistic teachings, artistic production, and architecture. She has been the teacher at the Education Science Mondragon University, and since 2022 she is responsible for the mediation group at Tabacalera. So, without further ado, good morning, Maria and Itziar. Thank you very much for this presentation and this invitation to participate here. We are going to share the screen here. Let's see if we can put up the screen. I hope you can see it well. Can you confirm? Yeah?
Sí, se ve bien.
Yeah, we can confirm that we follow the presentation. Good morning. As we mentioned, we wanted to thank the participation. We wanted to begin, as Roberto explained, talking about where we're coming from and how we work. We're parts of the Education Mediation Department of Contemporary Cultural Center, and we wanted to talk about the fact that we are no documentarists, as you will see in the presentation. We work generating relational contexts and mutual learning contexts between Tabacalera's line of work and the local context through the contemporary art practices or contemporary line of thought. And we have come closer to the archives like that, and we thought it was important to set the right context. And in addition to that, we think that many of you perhaps are not so familiar with Tabacalera, the tobacco company, so we wanted to quickly go through how Tabacalera was set up and for you to understand how important it is in the project. We are located in a building which pertained to a tobacco company at the beginning, like the rest of the tobacco factories from the state, because they were state-owned. And this corresponds to the usual architectural lines. This was inaugurated in 1913, and it was working for 90 years, producing cigarettes from Ducados, from the brand Ducados. As in the rest of the tobacco factories, in this factory the workers were mainly women, at least until the 70s, the so-called female cigarette makers. The factory, as it was colloquially called, was the smoke factory, because they fought a lot. You might know that the tobacco production was privatized, and the new company, Satavis, closes 8 factories, one of them the one in Donosti, and this happened in the year 2002. After the closure, the Basque government, the provincial government of Guipúzcoa and the city council of San Sebastián decided to retrofit the building to host a contemporary culture center to be called Tabacalera. The cultural project of Tabacalera with a K began prior to the inauguration, but it is inaugurated retrofit in 2015. Prior to the opening, from mediation, we were working with associations in the local context with neighbors from the neighborhood in order to draft joint work guidelines for the future. And in one of them, we wanted to deal with the acknowledgement of the past and dialoguing with the past, how to dialogue with the uses, memories, and cultures of the building. So we contacted with the tobacco makers, cigarette makers, in order to make a film with the artists Marion Cruz and Pablo Marquez. It was a 12-part series called Mañana Goodbye, which wanted to delve into the change in the productive model, moving from a tobacco factory to a cultural center. As we met them, we decided to stick together and continue to work, and we established the Archiveras del Humo, a group of women working together, the so-called smoke archivists. We have done many things with them, but we wanted to relay the community archive that we have built collectively, which is linked to a biographic and emotional and professional realm. These are the cigarette makers, some of the cigarette makers and some of the new workers. This is the group of archivists. The former cigarette makers and us, the archivists. I'm going to talk about the process of how we began setting up this archive, as my colleague mentioned. We did Mañana Goodbye, and we saw that many more elements cropped up. And Carla, one of the cigarette makers, suggested writing a book because she said, we have sufficient material. We didn't opt for that path or that venue, but they started bringing some objects and documents that they had stored at home. At that moment, they were already doing the archives and saving elements, etc. So we suggested that they bring everything. And we had a table full of things, and we started seeing many more subjects and themes for discussion. And when talking about a picture where 4 colleagues were working in a machine, we ended up talking about the inequality between male and female workers, the operators repairing the machinery, and the labor conditions. So there was this exercise of talking about the same object, which gave rise to hours and hours on end of discussion. So we started gathering all this material in a systematic manner, and let's highlight that we are not documentation specialists, but we started delving into how to archive, what it meant to set up the archives, and we did some visits to the Oñate provincial archive, where we can find the official archive for the factory. And we also found a research, a memoir written by Francisca García Paqui, who was an operator at the factory, and she got the degree in history while she was working in the factory, and she made important research. So we had anecdotes, fun facts, and experiences, and this was something that enticed us to say, this is the right path. and we started highlighting the importance of giving rise to those discussions based on their experiences, the experiences of the female cigarette makers. So based on Paki's research, we continued to pursue that line of research. So we started building that archive, introducing the catalog in our own way, and then we had an exhibit. We held an exhibit because we were thinking, how can we show this to the citizens? So when we started picking which materials to be used for the exhibit and how to set it up in an orderly manner, this helped us to classify the archive. So both tasks were run in parallel. And this was shown at the cellar of the factory for 1 year. And we can see the different panels, all of them by hand. As you can see, the graphs, they are magnets, and I don't know if you can see it, but it has been done with cigarettes, with cigarette butts, or cigarette filters rather. So we created these panels, and we decided to use magnets because this allowed us to shift positions, and the shifting of positions helped us relocate ideas, seek for brand new connections, and we really liked this dynamic, ever-changing format of the elements displayed at the exhibit. And I wanted to talk about the panel of the group of women working together, which is the one that you can see here. And you can see different materials and clips. Here we have a paper clip from the University of Smoke. And as Itziar mentioned, this was a university because they learned many things. And then we also have a letter from the social services and different pictures. And even though it was forbidden to take pictures, they had a lot of pictures that were taken. And then we have newly created materials, and also we have a picture of Paqui, Francisca Garcia, the researcher, and the research that she undertook of the factory. So you can see the kinds of materials that were displayed at the exhibit, and later on they were included in the archive. Yes, so as you can see on the screen these inputs. We worked in parallel in the exhibit and archive. And the fact that we needed to set up the right order, or to do the sorting, helped us in the categorization process to see which materials would be ascribed to one section or the other. So these are the panels that were part of the exhibit, which correspond to the categories of the cataloging for the archive. Previously you saw a table that we were working around, and this was placed at the cellar of the factory, and that's the table that we have used in order to work on the documents. And the 9th panel was done on top of that table. So the panel was truly that table, gathering the most intangible narratives as part of the recovered documents. And we wanted to highlight the unfinished elements and life-changing elements. And then we also have the materials adrift, and there's different disguises, decorative elements that were created by the cigarette makers, with the materials remaining. Like with the elements that were remaining, they designed their costumes with the remaining cellophane, etc., and the remaining felt material from the manufacturing of tobacco. So this was a learning process for us, and we were not left on our own on this path. We were accompanied by different people like Merche Tranche, who is a historian, library specialist, who performed a great research work on matchmakers in Irún. And she was listening firsthand to the cigarette makers. And she told us that it was really important to listen to them firsthand and to set up the archive with them. López Blasco, de Jauregui, and some other people along the way helped us. We have had some references of other collective archives that have conducted similar work, which acted as benchmark for us. And we had a clear idea that we wanted to have a critic point of view. We didn't want to set up a nostalgic, romanticized picture of the past. We wanted to relay everything as it was. And in the process of learning how to archive or how to dig deeper into the past, we saw that the way in which you archive conditions the material which is archived and vice versa. So, for example, we were interested in the fact that we didn't think that the white coats were archived in the same manner as other elements because the cigarette makers cut the sleeves or introduced some pouches. This is the way in which they hacked the white coats in order to render them more comfortable. And the frisking element was something that we wanted to capture because they were frisked at the end of each shift in order to make sure that the workers were not leaving with additional cigarettes on their way out. So we wanted to relay that frisking element also, and we introduced some recordings. For example, here we have an audio on the outsourcing of the services, as you can see here, and we also shot some videos because we wanted to make that storytelling part of the archives, and we generated some additional material as well. Like, for example, here, as you can see on the screen, we have the action of frisking. We decided to store this action somehow. So you can see also the type of archives we keep. At the screen, you can see Ducado's cigarette box. And at the other side, we have some recipes because they exchanged recipes and they wrote them down at the other side of the carton. And they told us that they were writing down verbs over and over again to memorize poetry, etc. So when we gathered all the material, they brought us these tokens, which are part of the archive. You have only 5 minutes remaining. Okay, thank you for the heads up. And we also wanted to highlight the idea that they were not the authors of the materials, but rather the gatherers or the collectors of those elements. But what happens with all the tokens and materials we gathered? Where are they? Well, the group decided that all these tokens be given back to the places of origin, which were their houses. So we don't have a physical storage. All the materials or the tokens were taken back to their houses, which is the right place they belong. So we have an indefinite, unfinished archive, which we try to render as active as possible. So there is an online version of the archive that you can peruse, first version of the online archive. And if you would like for us to do that, we can share the link and you can look into that. And inside the different categories, you don't just see documents, but a brief explanation of why they have been categorized the way they have been classified. As my colleague was saying, and we believe that this has been mentioned in the previous presentations, the fact that an archive is a living creature. This is not just an unfinished, but also a first version that we are going to try to expand. And we try to render more visible the work that we have put in throughout these years. We have done it in many different ways. We have done some organized visits to the factory premises with the workers and also the neighborhood, because it's important not only to talk about the factory side, but also the neighborhood and the community. And we have been working with different organizations. And we have also done some postcards. And in one of those visits, archivists are former or new workers of Tabacalera, but we have some new people, Lucia Montero, among others, who was very interested in the project. She's a filmmaker, and her help has been fundamental in the last part of this project. And in 2022, we have performed an audiovisual exhibit, and we wanted to cover the visits done by the cigarette makers, narrated from their voices, from their standpoint, that relays their past experience with the current context in order to give more visibility. That's why we use the materials of the archive. We presented that in June this year, and if you're interested, you can also watch it online at the Tabacalera website, and if you're interested, after the discussion, we can send the link over to you.
The group is still active, the group of archivists. And we wanted to respect the time because there are other speakers, and we're just going to leave it here. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, both.
La siguiente ponencia se titula
Next presentation is Fabra & Coats, 190 years of history in Barcelona. The speaker is Pérez Fernández and Jordi Giri, and they are all both workers. He was an apprentice at 14 years old, and after the training he went to the Faculty of Barcelona, being an industrial textile expert, just in control of productivity and other issues of the company. And then Jordi Gili, who worked in insurance and then in the shipping company, M. Condeminas. And then he got into Fabra & Coats, where he spent 34 years. And then he had a degree in business administration, and he was responsible for production and logistics. After their retirement, they have, through the Association of Friends of Fabra & Coats, they have been focused on recovering the memory of the work during all those years. Yes. Good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you very much for inviting us to this conference for the history of Fabra & Coats. We could be here even a whole month to talk about the history of the company. To sum it all up, in the year 1837, an industrialist from Girona, Ferran Puig i Gibert, was established in Barcelona in the neighborhood of Sant Andreu de Palomar. The daughter of Ferran Puig was married to Camilo Fabri and Fontanals, the first one in the Fabra saga, the first Marquis of Alella, also a Catalan industrialist, politician and humanist, and he was also the mayor of Barcelona. So they got, we can see him here, he was married, and he had a company called El Vapor del Fil. In 1870, the Fabra merged with the Portabella company, also in Sant Andreu, and then the name of Fabra and Portabella was created. In 1880, the threading company produced fishing nets, fabrics, and was the most important company in Spain, with a workforce of 2,500 employees. So the company was growing, but it had strong competition in Spain of Scottish origin. The company was called JP Coates, with headquarters in Scotland and a factory in Borgoña, 80 kilometers from Barcelona, away from Barcelona. In April 2003, both companies merged, and the Portabella had already been retired, with the name Compañía Anónima Hilaturas Fabra y Co. Because of this merger, we had to adapt in the steam boiler room 2 more boilers, apart from the already existing boilers. And the production increased by 37%. This steam boiler room, which is now a museum, is considered nowadays one of the only ones in Europe, because you can see the 3 energy systems. You can see that there is the coal, gas, and fuel. So in the year 1985, these 4 boilers stopped functioning, and they were replaced by an automatic one, Vulcano Sadeca, that produced the same power of the 4 semi-automatic ones. And the textile crisis and also the industrial restructuring between the years 1986 and 1990, with a workforce of around 3,000 employees, implied that the company had to start early retirement at 54 years for women and 58 to 60 for men. And having taken these measures, however, the company still had to fire 80 people. As management, we knew the future of the company. And so we had the opportunity to start preserving all machinery, pieces, utensils, photographs, records of medical records of workers, and different documents, all with the consent and authorization of the company. And that's me. And then Jordi, my friend Jordi, will come. So in December 2005, they stopped production and they sold the premises to a construction company, Renta Corporation. And then from then, we had 2,327 flats. And then some buildings were demolished, like the canteen building of the company. At the beginning of 2006, the ex-workers, seeing what had happened, decided to create the Friends Association of Fabra and Coat, and so that we can press, together with another neighbor associations, the administration. After 8 months, the 37,000 square meters of the premises was acquired by the City Council of Barcelona, and it became historic industrial heritage. But after that, they have demolished already 12% of the buildings, and currently they have changed the remaining buildings, around 25,000 square meters of these. They have changed these into primary school, secondary school, 35 social housing, a civic center for the neighborhood association, then 19 entities in the premises and artists association, and they are working on our final goal, which is the interpretation museum of work for Fabra Koch that we hope to inaugurate in April 2024. We already have the funds from the administration, but I think that it has taken us 14 years to get to this point. So we are a few months away from inaugurating the project. So we are old, most of the members of the association. We are around 500 members. But the average age of the members is around 60 years old. So what we did, we associated with MUBA and also the City Council of Barcelona. Why? Because we tend to disappear. Disappear as in the association, not ourselves. But MUBA is acquiring more museums, and it has lately acquired the Born Museum. Having said that, you can see here the whole factory of San Andreu. You see here the two main towers. This is an anecdote. There was something there with steam. Yes, steam was used for the machines. There was no electricity, so we used that for the machines, and so each department had a steam machine, and that's how it worked. If you look at this image, the windows are huge. Why? Because in the summer you could work up to 10 p.m. But in the winter, you work until 5 p.m. and went home. And then, after the steam boilers were working for dyeing and to warm up all the buildings. I don't have anything else to say. Jordi Gili, my colleague and friend, will say or will expand on this. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm just going to be very brief. So we're talking about documents here, and this is about documents, this Congress. So I'm just going to show one or two documents that we have around 1,000 square linear meters of documents, and the MUBA, the City Council, has scanned all these documents, and in the future in the near future, you're going to be able to access them. I just wanted to show a couple of things. So we have been working about buildings so far, and now I'm going to be talking about people a little bit more. And first of all, I would like to show, I don't know if I can show a couple of things. First of all, what Pera was talking about, what the company was. So he was saying he married this guy and someone else married this other guy, and this is what happened. This is what happens. We don't work like this nowadays. They did it in Fabra E-Codes or Codorniu, which were companies owned by families like this one. Nowadays, companies don't work in this way. These are all original documents. We haven't touched them. These come from some memories and some minutes from the company. And this was the way they used to work because they didn't have computers. We can take a lot of time explaining this. I would like to show another document, as I said before. Of how the company operated. And this is our work specification, and technical specification, and it was a specific production activity, and it was saying to the operator what he or she had to do. So, point number one is you should put some rubber gloves. So there was already protective equipment there. And in the point 12, to take off the gloves. So everything was said. There were accidents, of course, but everything was organized. And another thing that is interesting is this one here. This document here is almost the same. It's from the 80s. This was how a product was finished for sewing. And so the number of articles, the number of the label, the box, etc. And this was done by people within the company. And here, this is not that important. This was the regulation of the articles of the association, or the articles of the company from 1903 to 1989. So these are documents. I don't know if we can see this clearly here. I'm almost done. But this was a document from the year 1935. We have the original document, as I mentioned before. And it says, I can read. Can you read it? From the operator Bonaventura Serrat, starting in the company in June 1917. Years he's been working, 18. He's right now 63 years old. We think that it will be good for the company if he retires, because he looks tired physically. This was the year 1935, and I think, but then there was no retirement. So the company Fabra E-Codes, back then Hilaturas de Fabra E-Codes, had an insurance with the bank, and this company, they created a fund. So the company was already documenting all this. And this letter was sent until they received a reply. And this was another one. They asked for wage increase, also from the year 1936. And the manager says that he thinks he deserves the rise, and if the rise is given, they could ask them to come on Saturday and Sunday to oil the machines so that the machines didn't stop on Saturday and Sunday. But I don't know if they accepted it. It was the year 1936, as I said before. But I wanted to show you this just to give you an idea of what the company was. It was a patronizing company, and the management were treating the workers almost as their parents have treated them. So they were hard on the workers, but also they took good care of them. So I'm not going to say much else. We are proud in our association for having this museum, so we're going to die, and I hope that before we die we can see that this museum becomes a reality. Thank you very much.
Vamos a dar paso a la última ponencia de la jornada, la dedicada al patrimonio industrial.
This is the last presentation dedicated to industrial heritage of SEAT, Sunlights and Shadows. The speaker is Francesc Pietro Ruiz, a historian and responsible of the studies and projects of the democratic memory of the workers of SEAT. Is the company where he was born because his dad was working on it, and he's one of the main experts, and he works in the Asociación Nacional Jurid Autogestionada. So I was born inside the SEAT factory, and I lived there, and I was born in 1955, and I lived there until 1972. And all the day and night until the morning, he was in charge of everything that could happen in the company, technically and also work-wise. I never worked at SEAT. I lived there. One thing is to be born and live there, and another thing is to work there. It would have been too much. I'm going to try and be quick and agile, just saying that I was born in a factory that was a pioneer. And even though I didn't work there, I feel touched by it. So I'm a representative of the SEAT Memorial, which was founded in 2004. In 2010, the Generalitat gave it the Creu de Sant Jordi, an award to this association, and everyone was surprised by it because people thought how an association with not alone history got this recognition, this award. So this association aims to recover the workers' memory and just focusing on the workers' fight to recover the democratic freedom, the trade union rights, and also the conservation of the conservation of the architectonic and documentary heritage, and also the recovery of industrial and economic history. So this is quite complex because a lot of workers of the company who were retired try to forget that they work there. They wanted to forget it. They didn't want to have it, to remember it. But the recovery of the memory of the company was also difficult. Just to try and explain this simply, was sometimes is to recover the conflicts within the company and to explain a lot of workers that part of the heritage is the factory, the production lines, the iconic buildings. It's difficult to explain all that to the workers. They didn't think about the canteen of the branch of SEAT as something nice. I'm trying to be a bit simplistic about the explanation. So they explain the history of SEAT briefly, how the factory in Zona Franca was, and the iconic buildings that are very important. So here is the picture or image of the first factory in 1953. It's surrounded by fields. And interestingly enough, my granddad was born in Amaia, very near the SEAT factory. And he always said that this land belonged to Hospitalet and not Barcelona, and Barcelona had stolen it from Hospitalet. That's what he always said. And this is a floor plan of SEAT after the expansion at the end of the 70s. I have this at home. SEAT hasn't given this to me. So I'm just going to focus the future of the industrial heritage, a necessary debate. And I'm just going to be brief. This is an image. We don't have that many of them that don't belong to the company. Photographs that my dad took inside the factory. And here you can see my brother. In the year the SEAT 600 started to be built. 1977 that was. So I wanted to talk about the necessary preservation of the industrial heritage with regards to the buildings, factories, etc. And I'm just going to read a proposal by José María Montaner, which is one of the main architects worldwide. And he said that the disappearance of part of this heritage shows a fragility that shows what our contemporary culture is about. The restoration should be a priority. And we are not considering this right now as we did with modern architecture, when they were just thinking about new buildings that always look as such. Today, we are trying to activate the urban architectonic legacy, and modernity is already heritage. Some of the speakers have told us these last 2 days that there is a general idea that the heritage is the Gothic cathedrals, everything from the 16th century, but in Spain, the feeling that factories are also heritage is not something that we talk about. From Catalonia, it's very easy to go to France, and people ask themselves, how can the French preserve so many things and we don't? So the idea of heritage, and I could talk about France and other examples, is more strong in these other countries. So I'm just gonna talk about the problem of documents for SEAT, and I'm just going to read it. An essential part of the industrial heritage of SEAT, beyond the factories and iconic buildings, is all the documents that they have accumulated during their activity, as is the case with the rest of the companies. All these documents should be safe in the archives. But in the case of SEAT, it seems like a lot of these documents have been lost. An example was we abandoning the workshop #1 of mechanics when the import and export books or films from advertising campaigns were lost when they demolish these buildings. There are no positive news that SEAT has preserved a great part of this documentation from the period of 1950 to 1978 and the years after that. So this loss of original documents make it difficult to understand how a section was organized and how it functioned. And in the same way, not having the archive of the medical department seems difficult for us to explain the accidents and injuries. So there is a big list. They haven't safeguarded these archives, and it could be because Volkswagen is now the owner since 1986. Before that year, everything seems uncomfortable, except for anniversaries like the appearance of the SEAT 600. This anniversary happened because of all the work that we did, enhancing the heritage of SEAT, and so that the company felt that they had to do something about it. So the great part of the essential documents of SEAT are saved in the National Industry Institute or the Consorcio of Barcelona that owns the land where the old factory was built. I don't think we have the original documents of a lot of ancillary companies of SEAT. A lot of them had disappeared together with their archives. Another document sources in different municipal archives, architects, association, TV stations, and legal archives that but then were illegal trade unions, political parties, and different associations. So there is a huge number of documents preserved by the workers and their families, and a lot of them are preserved in the archive of the SEAT Memorial that is now in the historic archive of the trade union Comisiones Obreras. It is being classified and ordered by the archivist María Hispano Vilaseca. An important part of the history of SEAT is the transfer and preservation of the oral memory of those who work in the company and their families. It's a scattered memory because of their position in the organizational structure, depending on their qualification and in the department they were working at. For example, those people who work in the production, exhausting production line, or assembly line. So the assembly line was the hardest. Or those who work in the maintenance department. The way of looking at it is different for these two types of workers. And SEAT was the pioneer of the introduction of the rigorous Taylorism and Fordism. It was the first Fordism company in Spain. And also the people who came from the rural world to a company ruled by Taylorism and Fordism was very similar geographically speaking. So, for example, my dad and others who came from small companies with an industrial experience, the shock for them wasn't as hard than to those who came from rural areas of El Payars or Extremadura. Just being locked up for 8 hours in a company, it was a psychological shock for them. We should get the witness accounts of women, workers, wives and partners of the workers in such a masculine environment. But these women were present in some of the departments, like the cleaning department. They're so transparent. And when you were talking with male workers, we were asking them, were there women there? And they said there were no women there. And then we had to show the image of the women in the cabling department. And they said, oh, yeah, there were women there. So an important part of the SEAT history is to discern what the functioning of a Taylorism or Fordism company and the rest of companies in Europe with how the characteristics of the Franco regime. The workers tend to confuse certain rules, existing rules in SEAT, as part of a company in this dictatorship regime. But that wasn't the case. A lot of these rules were the same or similar in companies like Fiat, Renault, or Citroën. Some things were different, and they belong only to SEAT, but most of them were similar to other companies. Of course, the SEAT was under a dictatorship regime, and that was very specific. It's very important to say this, and we should study this. We should thank all the institutions that have collaborated with the SEAT Memorial, the regional government of Catalonia, the Generalitat, the MUBA, the History Museum of the city. We have done a lot of exhibitions with the City Council, with the regional government, the Generalitat. And here you can see some images of the things that we've been doing. And trying to summarize the history of a company like SEAT, just the factory in Zona Franca, only the factory was occupying 1.2 million square meters without taking into account the factory in Martorell and all the facilities that SEAT had all over Spain. In Madrid, there was a logistics warehouse, and SEAT is a whole world of its own that include various things, and it's very difficult to research all this, especially because of the lack of original documents. And sometimes documents don't explain everything. Yesterday we were saying that the administrations write things down but don't talk. My dad was always explaining to me what was happening in SEAT, but it will still be very difficult to explain why in SEAT the Guardia Civil wasn't able to intervene to avoid a strike. This is not in the documents, and there are a lot of things like that. So a lot of workers, they had information about what happened then and could talk about it. When the Democratic Memorial of SEAT, they were already dead. My dad died a year before that. I have a lot of oral information, and there will be others like me, but a lot of this oral information has been lost. Thank you very much, Francesc, for telling us this story of the Democratic Memorial. Sorry, we don't have time for questions.
Quería haber hablado, pero es que no me daba tiempo.
Bueno, pues buenas tardes ya.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you, José Luis González and Felix, to these two institutions and others for inviting me to close this event. So the order is as follows. First Felix, then the Dean, and then I will tell you a few words. So we're just going to do it that way, and I'm just going to give the floor to Felix. Good afternoon, Pashi, the Industrial Secretary of the Ministry of Spain, and Dean. I have some notes here. They told me what KANBAN meant yesterday, and I thought that was going to be a problem for me, but now I know. From the Foundation Anastasio de Gracia, we would like to express our satisfaction. There will be a lot of participation and discussions. And yesterday I was talking about this. What we pretend as an organization driven by a trade union is to open discussion spaces and dialogue spaces. We are very committed to culture, and we have a special interest in everything that has to do with recovering history of the workforce, but also of our industrial heritage. We think that we should safeguard it. We always said that we need to know the past to project the future. I would like also to congratulate all the participants and speakers, and I would also like to thank Adela Medrano for her commitment with everything that has to do with industrial documentary filmmaking, and also to thank the Dean and the faculty for always be open for this event, and also to Fotodoc for their expertise. And what I expect of this Congress, I hope that this the first edition of many more, that we have planted the seed to generate a project that will aim to generate and disseminate to society and experts the documentary heritage of this country. This is our mission, and we hope to get a lot of more participation in the following years. Our commitment is there. So thank you to all the speakers on-site and online for their ideas, their work, and their reflections, because they're all positive for the project itself and this Congress. Thank you all, and thank you for being here today for the closing of this event. Thank you, Secretary General, dear Pachi and Felix. Good afternoon, everyone. For being here for the closure of this Congress. And we already know, or we now know, the Japanese origin of the name of this Congress, and I would like to thank the people who chose this name, because I really like Japanese culture, and now I'm just going to have to investigate this Japanese technique. And beyond the jokes about the title of this Congress, we should congratulate ourselves because of the initiative and the success of the initiative. And the success is because of the Foundation Anastasio de Gracia. And I am so happy to have collaborated with the Foundation since I was elected Dean. It has been a very fruitful collaboration that has allowed us to advance in the knowledge of our archives for the 19th and 20th century, not only industrial archives, but also the trade union and workforce movements. Closing this event, I would like to say that we started a journey a few years back, and we are continuing on this journey to go even further. And one of the main learnings of this first International Congress is that it's not the first one. There are going to be many more to come, and we are, with the support of the Foundation and the research group Fotodoc of this faculty, and the support of the business archives that we have in Spain, and the support of all of you who have collaborated and funded this first International Congress, I'm sure that we will have many more. We should congratulate ourselves for this. As a dean of the faculty, I would like to thank the organizations who have prepared this, all the participants, all the speakers. Adela, that was very emotional. One of the best moments I have lived in this school. So just thank you so much for having chosen once more our faculty for this meeting. And we are working hard to preserve all of this, and I hope that we can learn and have a memory of this all. So thank you very much, and congratulations once again. I'm just going to follow on that, thanking everyone and congratulating all the organizations and the people, researchers, participants who have been working so that this Congress is a reality. Of course, the Foundation, Anastasia de Gracia, and the Dean, of course, the Incuna, SEIDIC, and all the organizations. I don't know all of them, but I know that you have all been working on this. As a Secretary General of Industry and small and medium-sized companies, of course, I value industry, and we are fostering innovation and competitiveness because we know how important it is for the economic development of a country. It exercise traction when it comes to other sectors to generate good jobs, and that's why we work hard to foster industry. And as someone who was born in Asturias, I know that industry is much more than that. It generates resources and jobs, but I know also that the industry is part of our identity, factories, workshops, the industrial culture and everything associated to the work in the factory and the mine and everywhere. This is a broad meaning of the word industry, and also the friendships born between the workers of an industry that work together, that enjoy things together, that they go on a strike together. This friendship, sometimes born because of trade unions, born in specific sectors and specifically in the industry, form part of my identity. So as a Secretary General of Industry and being born in Asturias, I have to thank you once again for this work. And I would like to remind those of you who have been working on this, I would like to also summarize these acknowledgements. As it was done in the inauguration, this initiative comes after the congresses from Teresa Tortella Amision that she has taken for the risk of the documentation of the industry. We have updated all that work, and now we see the starting point. So the discussions around the legislation that ensure the protection of the industrial archives has been very interesting, and also the first-hand experiences in other countries of Europe, like the business archives in Finland and the national archives in the workforce of France. And also you have enhanced the work of the different public and private archives in our country, and that with great generosity we have been working in preserving it as an element of our identity. We don't pay enough attention to that. As an administration, we have to be aware of that. And of course, we need to be critical, and we should pay more attention to this. And there are big companies in our country that have been working to protect their heritage, their industrial heritage, and have been role models for other ones. So people from UNOSA, and they are from my region, and I know the work that they've been doing. And it is important that in the future we have solutions for those corporations, small businesses, that don't have enough budget to protect their documents. And also I would like to recognize the work of Adela Medrano, who worked in a male-dominated industry, and her legacy is a unique witness account that will let future generations know how our productive past was. And also, I would like to thank KANBAN for the non-formal initiative for the conservation of industrial archives. Those archives that came from the workers, and this reveals the social need that we don't look at, and we should highlight always this social aspect and not only the economic, and we should see how important it is for workers that make sense to it, and they highlight their cultural value and their memory value. And again, once again, congratulations and thank you all.
Congreso, primero de otros muchos.
This first Congress is now officially closed. Thank you.